Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to another Trainer's Talk. Today's one is going to be very special. I'm sitting in paradise with the one and only Ron DeKoven.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before we get started, I want to read off a couple of things. Ron is a barrister and a lawyer, and I want to read off a couple of things because the list is long. We won't go through all of it because I think it will be like the beginning of Star Wars where you see the credits and the story if we go through it all. But Mr. DeKoven was called to the bar in Illinois and New York in 1968 and 1980 respectively. In 1980, Mr. DeKoven became a partner at Sherman and Sterling in New York. He ran several of the firm's practices during that time, and then after moving to London in 2003, Mr. DeKoven became an associate member of the South Square Chambers and was permitted by the Bar Council to practice New York and U.S. federal law in chambers. In 2008, Mr. DeKoven, I'll go even through this, long story short, became a barrister and continued to practice law as a New York lawyer and an English barrister. And then when did you move to Calistoga?
2012.
2012. So in 2012, moved here, made this your primary residence.
Right.
And you are currently the CEO of Mylawyer and MyBarrister.
Right.
Right. And which are law tech firms, which we'll get to down the road.
Fair enough.
I know that is really brief, as long as your list is. So we'll start kind of from the beginning. You grew up in Chicago.
Yes.
And what year were you born?
1944.
Awesome. And so you've went from Chicago, you graduated from Stanford for your bachelor's, you graduated from University of Chicago for your law degree. So what from the Southside of Chicago, what did that give you growing up?
I think that the whole experience was fairly modest.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, that was a benefit. By virtue of not having a lot of things, I think it shaped my approach to life.
Yeah.
Which I'm happy about.
Yeah. And we've been training, I've been your personal trainer since kind of 2012 once you really moved here.
Yes. And
that has been a cool, I call you my brother from another mother. And so, we've been able to build a relationship within the training and we share stories of us growing up and things that we're doing now. And one of the reasons I wanted to interview you is that you're very humble about talking about your career and the different things you've accomplished. And I think, your story is a story that's worth hearing and seeing and maybe one day reading. Actually, like a little kind of side story. So when you were a Pepsi, you were the one delivering, you were kind of getting the...
Oh yeah, I was on the truck.
And I remember us talking about how when you would do that, and that summer you got in some really great shape because of the deliveries that you were doing.
Right, so I was probably the biggest of the boys.
Yeah.
So they would give me the inner city routes.
Yes.
And the reason for that is that in the inner city, the liquor stores and the bars, basically the only storage they had was in the basement.
Yeah.
So they'd have these winding metal open staircases.
Wow.
And Pepsi-Cola just introduced the 16-ounce glass bottle. So the little wheelie thing was designed for 12 ounce.
Yeah, wow.
And the drivers were nice. They would give you advice, but then, they were talking to the bartender, writing up the order. Once you were there, it was your job to find whatever it is they had ordered, put it on the little wheelie, bring it inside, take it down the metal staircase, and then bring up the dirty empties. So, first day, driver says, "Kid, I just got one bit of advice for you." I said, "Okay." He explained the staircase. He said, "Now, this happens to everybody. At some point, you're going to lose the load. Don't grab it, because it'll suck you right down the staircase."
Jeez.
I said, "Yes, sir." So, they have skids on the back. So, he had to do, I think, 5 cases. So, because they were 16 ounces, it was actually above the hand grip.
Jeez.
So you got like this,
Yeah.
not like this. I never lost a bottle because I was really careful. But the worst delivery I ever had to make was a bar that had a Weimar on it, a male. And the bartender said, "Wait, just don't move." I said, "Okay." And he goes through a doorway, and I hear noises. And finally he says, "All right, you can come in." So he's straddling a big male with a 2x4 in the male's mouth. And he's drooling. And he's holding him back so I can bring the Pepsi-Cola through and then go down the staircase. And I had to make 2 round trips. I have to tell you, it toughened me up.
So you had there's, what was it, a mob situation? What was that? You don't ask. Yeah, you don't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
This was the Southside of Chicago.
Totally.
Probably one of the most difficult routes that would end. There was a turnaround, and the headquarters of the Black Peastone Nation was at the turnaround.
Wow.
It was also a huge elevated stop.
Yeah. And then Peastone's Nations, was that pretty much a gang, like the gang?
It was a gang.
Yeah.
And, they were serious about things.
Yes.
So, when you get a job, they tell you this is what you're doing, DeKoven. You get on the bus and you just do it. It was during the day too.
Yeah.
So, again, when I had started, an older bus driver took me aside out of the blue, and he said, "I'm going to tell you a couple of things. I want you to listen because it may save your life." So I listened. So one of the 3 things he told me was, as you're pulling up to a stop, if you see anyone wearing one of those silk-looking jackets, or if they have a chain around their neck, you keep going. He said, "I don't care if there's a 100-year-old lady there with a cane. Don't stop. You're looking for trouble." So that's how I functioned.
Yeah.
And by the middle of this trip, I had already stopped. The doors were open. People were loading at the front. They come in and they put their money in the box.
Yeah.
And I could see the rearview mirror. There were 5 young guys who had been lying down in the grass on the side. They all had jackets. They get up, they go to the back doors, they pry the doors open, and then there's silence on the bus. And they walk to the front. Now, the front of these old CTA buses, the seats were parallel with the windows.
Gotcha.
And then you had normal seating.
Yeah.
So the man in charge, and you could tell he was in charge, because he had a gun. He sits down right behind me. And by then everyone's loaded and I start to take off. And children, put your hands over your ears. He says to me, "What's a white motherfucker like you doing in my hood?" So I said, "I go to school here." He said, "School? What kind of school?" "Law school. In fact, it's right over there." He yells out to the other four, "I just found me my lawyer."
You make your way to Calistoga.
Yep.
And I remember meeting you and Linda. You guys have stayed at Solage, and that's where I met you. But you know what made you guys, really made that commitment that you wanted to make this your kind of permanent space and your permanent home?
Well, for years, I wanted to buy a second home.
Mm-hmm.
Because barristers really only work about 8 months of the year.
Mm-hmm.
When you're a senior barrister, if the courts are closed, there really isn't that much for you to do. I mean, you can get work.
Yeah.
But my view was, why bother?
Yeah, yeah.
So we would take these long holidays.
Mm.
And wherever we went, I would say to Linda, "What about here?" "No." And I won't take you through all the places she said no to.
Yes, yeah.
But we were at Solage. It was the third year of our visits. And in that third year, we stayed there for a month. And I had stopped asking her about, I figured it would never happen.
Yeah.
And she turned to me and said, "Would you like to see a real estate agent?" I thought, that's a sign. So I said yes. And it didn't happen immediately, but we found this property with help. Well, actually, Linda found it.
Yeah.
The broker didn't find it. And basically, the moment I saw it on the internet, I wanted to buy it.
Yeah.
But she said, maybe you should see it first.
Yeah.
So, and we had just come back from here. So a month later, we flew back and saw the property, and it was even more beautiful than it looked on the internet. So we bought it.
Yeah.
And we intended it as a second home.
Yeah.
But, so we closed on the deal December of 2011. It's now right before Easter of 2012. We're in our London home. It's raining, it's cold.
Yeah.
We're in what the Brits call the lower ground, in other words, the basement.
Yeah.
But in those houses, the basement is a real room.
Yeah.
So, and that's where we had television. Then you walk outside, and there was a garden,
Yeah.
and then a garage. So, I look outside, and it's coming down in buckets, and it's cold. And I said to Linda, who was on her computer, I said, if anyone knew what we owned in California and saw us here, they would say we were stupid. And she turns back to me and says, "Do you want to sell?" And I said, yes. That's how we made the decision.
Wow.
To move here full time.
Wow. That's cool. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about some fitness related things and some nutrition related things. Like I said, we've been working together since 2012, and we've kind of gone through different iterations of getting stronger and using the weights. What has made, why did you want to have a personal trainer, and why did you want to focus on having consistent training?
I view the training as being integral to a happy life. Mm-hmm. I think that when I was younger, I didn't have a trainer, and every workout was identical.
Yeah.
Now, I was able to get away with that because I was very fit, and I've been working out. I started working out when I was 12.
Yeah.
When I bought my first weight set. But even through my time at Sherman and Sterling, I was still doing my own thing. When we got to London, we actually created a gym in our house.
Yeah.
And Linda found a trainer, and who we're still friendly with.
Yes, yeah.
As I think you know. And he was terrific. He would show up 6:30 in the morning, which in London is like the middle of the night, because so dark. And to go out when it's dark and rainy and cold, I mean, you have to be Superman to train under those circumstances.
Yeah.
If it's in your own home, it's not so terrible. So you just brush your teeth and put on your shorts and walk downstairs, open the door, and you start to train.
Yeah.
And he was very good. He had done a fair amount of professional sports training, and like you, he figured out what was the best way to deal with me at that time, and Linda, because I'm trying to think. So this would have been 2005, so 15 years ago. So I was 60.
Yeah.
So I was in pretty good shape for a 60-year-old.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of equipment and a lot of free weights. So I always had a complete workout.
Yeah.
I can't even remember. We had a treadmill, we had a rower, we had a, what?
Elliptical or?
Yeah, an elliptical. Maybe that was it, or maybe I'm missing one other. We didn't take any of it with us because it was all set up for the UK.
Yeah.
We actually gave it away, which was not the smartest thing ever, but we did. So once I had that experience, there was no question we were going to try to find a trainer here. In addition to the obvious and sort of keeping yourself reasonably well fit, you make a commitment to your trainer that you're going to show up.
Yeah.
And that is a very positive thing. Otherwise, you can easily go down the slippery slope of, going to Bella's and spending the morning eating Danish and drinking coffee.
Yeah.
It's okay to do that after you work out.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of finding someone who you're comfortable working with, because I think working out is critical to health.
Yeah. It's one of the things that nutrition is kind of a big part of that, and lately you've been doing what we call the Hugh Jackman diet. And if you can explain to the folks what the Hugh Jackman diet is, and why do you feel it's been helpful for you?
So it's a pretty simple diet. Basically, you on the program, you have for every 24-hour segment, you have 8 hours where you're free to eat whatever you're going to eat.
Yeah.
But for 16, it's a fast.
Yeah.
So what I found is the most sort of comfortable approach is to get up in the morning. You can drink black coffee, no sugar, and you can have some dairy.
Yeah.
I don't. I just drink it black, and then usually, I work out.
Yeah.
And then I have work to do.
Yeah.
So it's not difficult to wait until noon for my first food, even though I do love eating breakfast.
Yeah.
I managed to deal with it. And so I'll have lunch, then sometimes I'll have a snack at 3 o'clock, an orange or something, and then we'll eat dinner. But by 8 o'clock at night, you close down.
Yeah.
And that's not difficult. And we feed Tina usually at 5 or 5:30. We eat at between 6 and 7.
Yeah.
And by 8 o'clock, we're off watching Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. And kind of one more fitness kind of related thing, and then we'll kind of move to another topic is over the last several years, we've kind of got into doing, especially during the season of summer and early spring, getting into the pool and doing aqua workouts. And, that's, moving away from, we still do the weights, we still do cardio in some conventional ways, but what's kind of the thing that, what do you really like about the aqua situation and the workouts?
So before I give you that answer, I will confess that I view pool workouts as something that old ladies do.
Yeah.
So whenever it first came up as a possibility, I thought, well, it's going to be a waste of time.
Yeah.
Of course, I was wrong.
Yeah.
The reason that the aqua workout is so amazing is that when you finish, you feel spectacular.
Yeah.
It's just being in the water creates a feeling that can't be replicated if you're doing a normal workout.
Yeah.
And I look forward to, now we do it on Wednesdays. I look forward to it every week.
Yeah.
It's spectacular. And I think it ends up training different muscles than would be trained in a conventional workout.
Yeah.
So that's good too.
Yeah, totally. Since you've been here, and even in your past, like I was, looking at and us talking about this, you have done a lot of charity work, and outside of that, your tech startups. There's usually somebody over the age of 75 is not starting into a startup. Usually. And I think with our conversation, you're not the usual. So, what does pay it forward mean to you?
I think it's a way of saying thank you to all the people who have helped me in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes when you're young, you might not understand how special the help is.
Yeah.
And you might not have been properly appreciative.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, by the time you recognize that, the people who've helped you are dead.
Yeah.
And so by doing similar things for younger people. Hopefully, it's a way to get the scale back in balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And wow, because there's so many stories, and I wish we had more time to kind of go through it. But the, you know, when you kind of look back at, you know, where you grew up, you know, we even go too deep into your family situation and everything, and you know that wasn't, you know, that wasn't the easiest, but you have all these situations, and like even just of what we talked about today, and even more stuff that I know, you know, you listen to the old man, you listen to people who were giving you advice. There's also a story, maybe our second go around, we can talk about the story about the sorority that helped you out when you were, how old were you when that happened?
In DC?
In DC.
Probably, it was the summer of '65, so I turned 21 that summer.
Yeah. And so, you know, I think the important thing is, like, within that is I forget the saying, but, you know, the wisdom to listen to those who have done things before, and also listen to that advice. I feel like there has been so many different things of you traveling just to get to Stanford. Like I said, there's so many stories. We will have to do another round to kind of talk about that. But now the things you've accomplished, you're now at a level where you're doing the things you're doing with the law tech. What do you want your legacy to be, or what do you hope people see when they look back at your career and what you've done?
It's a tough question because, as you know, I don't spend a lot of time looking back.
Yes.
However, I had an experience at lunch in Singapore about 2 years ago with an amazing man, a man who's probably the most distinguished lawyer in Singapore. And he told me the answer to your question.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the lunch, he said, how can I help you while you're here?
And let's put preface. Who was this individual? What was his? Because I think that needs some clarity also.
This man is a former Supreme Court Justice in Singapore. He sits on the board of the Central Bank of Singapore. Mm-hmm. He was formerly the Attorney General of Singapore. Oh. And he's now functioning as an English barrister. He is a Singapore barrister,
yeah,
but he is with one of the very best sets of English barristers in London.
Yeah.
And he has a group in Singapore he's running. And he was making himself clear that whatever help I needed, he was prepared to offer if he could. And I must have looked a little surprised because, candidly, I wouldn't have asked for help. I know him and I've spent time with him, but not a lot over the years. And he said, Ron, you need to understand why I've offered this to you. So I smiled and I said, I would like to know that. And he said, I've looked at your CV. Mm-hmm. And he said, you have the most amazing career of any lawyer I know.
Yeah.
I was.
That's one high compliment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my answer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
I hold you in very high regard. I think the way that you've gone about creating your own company is amazing. And I debated telling you in advance what my question was going to be.
Yeah.
But I forgot, so I apologize.
Okay.
My question is this. Looking back over the past few years, can you identify 3 things that you've learned while becoming an absolutely first-class entrepreneur?
So ask that again. And then I want to soak it in, and then I'm going to give you the answer. So 3 things.
3 things that you've learned in the process of becoming a first-class entrepreneur.
Yeah, there's definitely being an entrepreneur is humbling. So that is definitely something. But I would say the things that I've learned is that I feel like you can truly affect change being an entrepreneur. And I think it's very similar to what you said as being a barrister, of you can say no. You know, I don't say no that often, but you can say no and you can really be focused on the thing that you're trying to accomplish. And that's something I learned, and you don't fully get and understand until you become an entrepreneur. I think the other thing that you learn is that respect the process, continue to respect it. And within that process is have a partner by your side that's willing to work just as hard as you, but sometimes even more. I think we've both succeeded in that lane.
We're fortunate.
Yeah, and so that part is what I've learned, is that our success, I do think I could have been successful without my partner, but I can't be as happy and successful, without her. So I know that she balances me out along with the kids, and then the other thing, I kind of already had this, but I always kind of come back to it. It's something kind of within the process, is that being consistent to the point that people can count on you. It's kind of going through that part of it, of like, even when the expectation's on you, can you still deliver? And if you do some of the basics as an entrepreneur and you just show up, some of it just showing up, you're already ahead of the game. Because a lot of people just don't show up, So those are some of the few things I've learned.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was insightful.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions?
Nope.
All right.
Since it was a 3-parter, I thought that was enough.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, this has been really amazing. Thank you again for joining me on Trainers Talks, and I think we'll have to, do this again and maybe go through some more stories, because there's a well of stories, and I feel like we were in a 2-foot swimming pool today on some of the stories that you had, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. But this one was a treasure. Thank you again.
Thanks, Coach.